Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to unpack something pretty significant that's just landed in UK policy. It's a new immigration white paper, quite hefty too, 82 pages, and it's called Restoring Control Over the Immigration System.
That's right. And our mission today is really to get to grips with what this document actually means for immigration here in the UK going forward.
Okay, so the core aim seems pretty clear from the title, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really lays out the government strategy to, reduce overall net migration figures and also to significantly enhance border security.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? There's context here.
No, definitely not. It's largely a response to quite a noticeable increase in net migration that happened between roughly 2019 and 2023. So that's the backdrop for all these proposed changes.
Right. So let's dig into the specifics then. The central theme seems to be prioritizing people who can really contribute to economic growth.
Exactly.
And when they say contribution, it sounds like they're really zeroing in on, highly skilled workers and graduates.
Precisely. That strategic direction comes through very clearly in several key proposals. For instance, the actual skills threshold for someone coming in as a skilled worker is being lifted.
Lift to how far?
To RQF level 6. Now, for most people, that means graduate level or above.
Okay, graduate level.
And alongside that, there's also going to be an increase in the minimum salary threshold for these skilled worker roles. So it's not just about qualifications on paper, it's about the pay level too.
Yeah.
Aiming for, higher caliber talent.
And I also picked up on this push for businesses, UK businesses, to invest more in training people already here, the domestic workforce. Less reliance on bringing people in.
Yes, that's a very strong thread running through it. Greater self-sufficiency in skills seems to be the goal. And to kind of push that along, the immigration salary list is being scrapped.
Ah, the one that offered discounts on the salary threshold for certain jobs?
That's the one. It's being abolished completely. It was originally meant to help with specific labor shortages, but the government seems to want a more standard approach now, tied directly to those higher skill levels.
Okay, this is where it gets quite interesting, I think. Access to the points-based system itself sounds like it's going to be, tighter, more focused.
Much more focused, yes. It looks like it'll primarily be reserved for jobs where there's a really clear sort of long-term shortage.
And not just any shortage.
No, even then, it's not automatic. The white paper says the Migration Advisory Committee, the MSESA, they'll need to provide a pretty solid justification for why an occupation should be on that list.
Okay.
And on top of that, employers who want to recruit internationally for those roles will have to show they've got a proper plan, a workforce strategy for developing domestic talent too. It's not just about filling the gap from overseas.
Right, a commitment to training locally. Now, thinking about sectors, adult social care, that's one that's, historically relied quite heavily on overseas workers. What's the plan there?
Yes, that's facing a really significant shift. The paper outlines that overseas recruitment, specifically for social care visas, that's going to end for new applicants.
Wow, okay. That sounds major, given the pressures already in that sector.
It is. It aligns with that overall goal of raising skills thresholds across the board. But it could certainly have, considerable implications.
Is there any kind of phasing, or is it just a hard stop?
There is a transition period mentioned, thankfully. Until 2028, people who are already here working in the UK social care sector, they'll still be able to extend their visas or switch between different social care jobs within the UK.
Okay, so a buffer period.
Exactly. It's meant to provide a window while a longer-term workforce strategy for social care is developed and hopefully put in place. But they do say this transition will be regularly reviewed.
Makes sense. Okay, let's switch focus to international students, another significant group. What changes are coming for study visas?
Right, for students, the requirements for the actual institutions, the universities, colleges that sponsor them are going to be strengthened. More scrutiny, essentially.
What do you mean?
Well, they're planning new interventions for sponsors who look like they might be sort of failing in their duties. Things like forcing them to have action plans or even putting limits on how many new international students they can actually recruit.
And what about after they've finished their studies? The post-study work options?
That's changing too. The time graduates can stay in the UK after their course finishes being cut back to 18 months.
18 months, okay.
Yeah, which suggests they want that post-study period to be more closely tied to actually finding skilled work rather than just, staying on.
The white paper also touches on family immigration and mentions tackling complexity. What does that involve?
Well, it acknowledges that the current rules can be, frankly, quite complicated and difficult to navigate. So the aim seems to be to create a clear, perhaps more streamlined framework for people coming based on family ties or private life connections.
Okay, and there was a specific point about Article 8, wasn't there? The right to family life, particularly in deportation cases.
Yes, that's quite pointed. The proposed legislation wants to make it clearer that it's ultimately the government and parliament who decide who gets to stay in the UK. This is framed as a response to cases where Article 8 arguments have been used to stop deportations, even when removal is considered, in the public interest.
Right. Shifting gears a bit, while some routes are tightening, there's also talk about actively attracting certain types of people, the very highly skilled.
Absolutely. That's the other side of the coin. There's a clear ambition to really step up efforts to bring in top global talent through specific targeted routes.
How so?
Well, things like increasing the number of places on the existing high-talent visas, creating faster pathways for people with very specific skills or experience that could boost growth in, say, strategic industries.
Any concrete examples mentioned?
Yeah, they do give a few. Increasing places for research interns, making it easier for top scientists or designers to use the global talent visa. And also reviewing things like the innovator founder visa and the high potential individual route to make sure they're actually working effectively to attract those sort of high-impact individuals.
Of course, any system like this can face attempts at abuse. What's being proposed to tackle that?
Yeah, they dedicate a section to tackling abuse. It includes new ways of looking at asylum claims made after someone has arrived, especially if things haven't really changed much back in their home country.
Okay.
And also implementing stricter visa controls if there's evidence of abuse within a particular route or from a particular area.
And it sounded like they want more cooperation from other countries as well.
That's definitely part of it. An emphasis on getting other governments to, work with the UK on the integrity of the system, particularly when it comes to taking back their own nationals if they don't have the right to be here. Plus, there are proposals for financial measures, penalties, sanctions aimed at sponsors, whether that's employers or educational institutions if abuse is proven. And also measures to help migrants themselves understand and stick to their visa conditions.
Another area often in the headlines is foreign national offenders, or FNOs. What's changing there?
The deportation system for FNOs is up for reform. The key thing seems to be making sure the Home Office gets notified about all foreign nationals convicted of an offense, not just those who end up getting a prison sentence.
Ah, okay, broadening the net.
Seems so. And also, they're going to review the actual thresholds for deportation. So looking beyond just the sentence length to consider other factors, they mentioned starting by revising the exceptions, particularly for cases involving violence against women and girls.
Language is often key to integration. Any changes on the English language front?
Yes, the paper signals new English language requirements across more immigration routes. And importantly, this might apply not just to the main applicant, but potentially to their dependents too. And there's also mention of maybe assessing improvement in English language skills over time, not just at the point of entry.
Interesting. Finally, let's talk about the long game settlement and citizenship. Some pretty big changes proposed here.
Indeed. Probably the most eye-catching is doubling the standard qualifying period for settlement. Doubling it to 10 years. That's quite a substantial increase from the current standard, which is often 5 years for many routes.
Wow, okay, 10-year standard. And the points-based system, is that playing more of a role here too?
Seems like it. The plan is to extend the principles of the points-based system to cover the rules for settlement and eventually citizenship as well. The focus will be on, again, that idea of contribution to the UK.
And we'll get more detail on what contribution means in this context.
Yes, they say more details on those specific criteria should be published by the end of the year.
Okay. And it's worth reminding ourselves, these aren't just ideas floating around. They're part of the government's wider plan for change.
Exactly. And the intention is to implement them over the course of this parliament. Some initial changes, they suggest, could even come into effect quite quickly, perhaps in the coming weeks.
So things could start moving soon.
Potentially, yes. And it's also important to remember this white paper probably isn't the absolute final word. The government has said more proposals are coming later this summer, specifically on the asylum system and broader border security, building on that existing border security, asylum, and immigration bill.
Right. So bringing this all together after our deep dive, the big themes are clearly about reducing overall migration numbers, definitely strengthening border controls, and really sharpening the focus on skilled workers perceived as offering the most economic benefit. It's a huge package of reforms.
Potentially reshaping the UK's whole approach to immigration.
Absolutely. Now, for you listening, if you're navigating life here in the UK, maybe looking for services, could be anything from legal advice to housing, we do recommend checking out the UK Compass mobile app. It's completely free.
Yeah, it's a great platform. It basically connects you directly with top-rated service providers across the UK, and there's no extra charge for using the app to find them. You can just download it from your usual app store.
Definitely worth a look. Also, please do follow us on social media. We often share more detailed insights and updates on important topics just like this one.
You do.
And finally, as always, we like to leave you with something to think about. Considering everything we've discussed today, all these proposed changes to the UK's immigration system, what do you think will be the single biggest long-term consequence for the country?